Welcome back to MVD Apologetics. As you guys may know, this is my first long-form content video in quite some time. And what better way to re-enter the long-form video space than book review? And the book that I will be going through today is Time Management by Tracy. As you can see, the book is not very thick. I think it's about 105 pages. It's a very thin book. I read it in about a day or in about a few hours, and that's not me boasting. That's something that I think anyone who can read should be able to do. It's a very, very thin book. Now, I think the way to preface going into this topic of time management, especially as an apologetics channel, is first understanding how Christians should view time. And very often I don't like to hear it, but very often I hear the term that time is a gift from God. And sure, you can think of it, but I think the far better way to think about time is that it's a loan from God. And why do I think that thinking of time as a loan from God as opposed to a gift from God is better? If I were to give money to a friend as a gift, even if I prefer my friend buys a football with it, it's perfectly within his right to buy a hoodie or new shoes with it. That's the point of the gift. The ownership and the right to spend that money wherever is on him. But if I was to loan someone money, I expect that money returned to me, and probably with interest, meaning that the person I give money to should learn to invest it very well. Similarly, I believe that God loans us time. It's not what I believe. Similarly, God loans us time. And you look at the parable of talents, this is not my opinion, right? God loans us time, not for us to spend freely here and there, but to invest it into things such as serving God, such as loving people, and fulfilling callings. And not to waste it on things which I every now and then waste it on, such as doom scrolling and spending it on people who drain your energy and have nothing good to give. And some verses that I really enjoyed were Ephesians chapter 5 verses 15 to 16. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise but as wise, making the best use of the time because the days are evil. And Psalms chapter 90 verses 12. So teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. And the word of God is clear that we are to be good stewards of our time. For those of you who know my life the last few years, you guys would know that I was forced to sort of face my time management head on when managing multiple commitments such as full-time work alongside full-time uni and a handful of ministry and other social commitments, including fitness, music, etc. But what all this pressure did is it kind of made me brute force my way into figuring out how to manage my time a lot better. So without further ado, let me dive into the book, Time Management by Tracy. I actually got this book from a book festival in Vijaywada, and since Vijaywada is in India, I spent I think the equivalent of 3 AUD on this book, which is I think around 150 rupees for those of you. Now, the core philosophies that I would enter this book with, and they're affirmed in the book. First, time management is life management. Don't think of time as something small and, a negligible part of your life, you go day by day. Once you start to understand, once you have even just a single day where you're using every single minute of that day to the best of your ability, even if you just have a single day of that, you will very clearly and quickly understand how core managing your time is to reaping value in your life. Now, the next thing, habits are greater than hacks. Especially if you're new to the concept of time management, at some point I was really looking for what is the cheapest solution I can implement in my life in order to get the greatest benefit. In other words, hacks, But the truth is, hacks don't matter as much as habits. When it comes to time management, it's all about building a habit. You can implement a hack, but can you do that hack tomorrow? Can you do it the day after? Do you have a routine, etc.? The other sort of philosophy that this book has in its introduction is the 4 Ds: desire, decisiveness, determination, and discipline. Desire, you must have a burning, intense desire to get full control of your time. Decisiveness, you must make a clear decision to manage your time better. Determination, you must persist in the face of temptation and struggle. And discipline, you must do what you need to do, especially when it's not what you want to do. After introducing these philosophies, what this book did is it then introduced certain principles or certain mindsets that were, I believe, really helpful in sort of shaping how I approach the rest of my book and time management in my day-to-day. First being identity first. Self-concept drives behavior. If you think I'm organized, you act organized. If you close your eyes and you really simulate yourself as someone who's really organized and makes the best use of their time, then that cycles your brain to convince itself and your body to be more organized. Have a try for yourself. At the same time, if your mindset is, I really suck at managing my time, I waste time all the time, you just enter this really, really short feedback loop where you think you're bad at managing your time, and then your body follows suit and manages your time badly, and then you have more reason to convince yourself that you don't manage your time well, and it just keeps on going over and over again, and you're just horrible with your time. And I'm speaking this as someone who has done this plenty of times. So identity first. If you think you're organized, if you think of yourself as someone who is organized and manages their time well, you will be organized and you will manage your time well. The next mindset to keep in your mind is values. For example, and this is an interesting thought I found in the book, often when you're very anxious or stressed about a topic or about a task that you're doing, it's often because this task doesn't really align with your genuine values. And what values does is it produces your vision and your mission. What your vision and mission does is it produces your plans, and your plans produce your daily execution. But if your daily execution is not lining up to your values, you're simply climbing up a ladder, up a building that you don't even want to climb in the first place. And that's why you're frustrated. You're climbing up a ladder. It doesn't mean anything, these tasks. And there are plenty applicable techniques that we'll dive into later. So you want to climb up the right ladder on the right wall, which is your values. And the next is the 80-20 rule. And what that means is that a few tasks, 20% of your tasks create 80% of the value. And that also means that 80% of the tasks create only 20% of the value. So a lot of this prioritization and a lot of time management is often looking for and prioritizing that 20% of tasks that produce 80% of value. And there's plenty of other mindset points. These are just the three I shortlisted. Next are practical techniques. And yeah, these are three I shortlisted as well. First is doing your to-do list correctly. Now, what is really useful, and very often, and I used to do this before, I used to have, my tea in the morning, my coffee in the morning, my chai. Mom would call me down for chai and biscuits. And I would have my book, my journal right here. Got my phone here actually. And I would write down a to-do list of things to do in the morning. Now, what this book suggested I do is I shift writing that to-do list to the night before. So when I wake up, I hit the ground running and I sleep better. And I actually found that to be the case, where I write my to-do list to the night before. And you could also add tags of prioritization, ABC, and also another concept there was measuring the priority of tasks based on how bad the impact would be if I didn't do them. For example, if I have a report due in, 5 minutes, which is, okay, not 5 minutes. If I have a report due in a couple of days, which is worth 80% of my grade, that is very critical. If I don't do that task, then it's going to really devastate and it'll probably offset my degree, etc. If I was to not write this article, which no one is going to read anyway, no one's going to recognize that if I didn't write this article, right? So the impact of not writing the article is very small. So I'd obviously prioritize something which has a larger impact if not done than something which has a lesser or no impact if not done. There is a law of three, which is simple. Just pick 3 things that you aim to do. Don't worry about the rest. All you want on your mind is those 3 things. And another thing that I found really useful is having a clean workspace. So only having the tools that are relevant to your task in front of you. And I remember back in my HSC days, I had a room in our house, and we weren't really using the room. All I had was just an empty table. And when it was time for me to memorize my English essay, all I would do is get printouts of that paper. I'd go into that room and I'd just get blank paper and a pen, just those 3 things. And I'd sit down and memorize. And I was able to memorize, I think, about 3,000 words in the matter of a couple of days of spending time in that room. Now, what do I actually implement in my life? First, obviously, identity first. Act as if. Sometimes every morning I will close my eyes and I will say, what would a highly productive Christian do right now? Next, PERT charts, P-E-R-T. Usually for larger projects, something to do with like a youth program I'm running, or if I'm building larger pieces of content, or I'm planning study blocks, what I do is you'd have a big project, you want to break it down into tasks. And a PERT chart essentially breaks it down into tasks. It shows which tasks are dependent on which tasks, shows what you need to do in order to do this task, and it makes it very clear. Very often breaking a larger task into smaller tasks is all the drive you need in order to take on that task, because now you've, instead of slaying one big dragon, you've got a bunch of baby dragons to slay. I don't know if that analogy works, but yeah, next, deadlines. Now, deadlines with cushion, meaning like a contingency. Give like a reasonable deadline for the goals you set for the tasks you have. Add a contingency. You don't want to, discourage yourself if you miss a deadline. But goals and tasks without deadlines, they're just there for decoration. You're not going to complete them if you don't have a deadline, if you don't give yourself a deadline to do the task. And the next thing, I also do the daily list thing I mentioned. Every night I'll write down my to-do list and I would grade each A, B, C, D, E. And I would select 3, which I'll focus for the next day. And I think it's one of the things I see a bit rare. If you're popular, you might have to use this technique a lot. It's called hell yeah or no. In essence, when you're invited to plans and you have these commitments and people want you there, you're either going to say hell yeah or no. If you're on the fence, you'll save a bunch of time just by saying no. And I think one of the quotes from this book is that the word that will help you with your time management the most is no. Being able to say no to things that you don't have to go to, or no to things that don't really produce value with your tasks and your goals. Now, next, there are strengths and limits that I would probably keep in mind when entering this book. And the strength is, it's a toolbox. It's a very, very wide toolbox. You're immediately able to implement it and to, practice your habits. And these are all proven practices. These all actively work, especially in a corporate context. A weakness is that obviously this book, I guess it's intended for the day-to-day person, but I think a decent portion of this book is really, really targeting, the corporate boss who has employees reporting to him and, he wants to get that promotion, etc. And I'm sure if that's your life, you'll find a great amount of value in this book. I still read through the book fully and found little nuggets that I'm still able to apply. But keep in mind, this book does lean towards the corporate style. It's still useful, but what I would do is I'd adapt it for, me as a student, or me in the creative space, or me in ministry. But these things are adaptable. And the next thing is, I wouldn't implement 20 things at once. And that's probably one of the mistakes I probably started making when early in my time management journey, is that I would try implement as many of the techniques as I can. Start with just 1 or 2 techniques. Build a habit, not a hack, okay? You want to build a habit and then layer the next thing. And then if sometimes the 1 to 2 things you try out, one may not work. You may find this is not useful for you. So you might drop that and try pick something else up. Time management is personal. Mix and match each task and each strategy. You need to understand that there is a unique way and unique set of techniques that will work and pair very well with your psychology and your day-to-day life and the nature of tasks that you take on. And it's all a matter of, finding that combination, trying different trying different techniques or building different habits and see what works best. I do want to close with our perspective as a Christian. First, you are a steward. You are to use your time as a tool to serve God. If it's to achieve something that's only to benefit yourself and not your duty as a follower of Christ, then I would put it next to the things that reap absolutely no value whatsoever. So productivity for you as a follower of Christ will prioritize your health, will prioritize your inner life or spiritual health, and will prioritize your relationships with your friends and your family, etc. I'll leave you guys with these practical challenges. And what I want you guys to do this week is 1, write tomorrow's to-do list tonight, okay? 2, once you write your to-do list tonight, choose the big 3. These are the only 3 that you're going to keep in your mind as you tackle them tomorrow. And 3, close your eyes and ask yourself, what would my life look like if I was a highly productive person? Now, without further ado, that concludes my review and philosophy surrounding time management and Brian Tracy's book, Time Management. Anyways, this is MVD, Crucified with Christ. Like and follow. Ciao.